Hello, this is Aaron again. It is August 13th, year 2020. Today I'm going to be speaking about my thoughts and findings on a particular topic that is also very touchy with almost every United States resident. It is pretty much the question of, should black people respect the flag or what the flag represents? Because as we all know, the flag is a cloth, but that cloth is the banner that stands for the United States of America. And just to have some foundation, let's define what respect is. Respect is admiration for the qualities or deeds of a given being. And most cultures, that being would have to be a living being. So in a good amount of cultures, a word similar to respect cannot be used for a flag or the nation that the flag represents. They would possibly use whatever different word that they had that have a similar meaning, but does not hold the weight that respect does. Respect is more of an emotional thing, a relationship that you can have with another living being, and in some cultures, only another living human being. So the way that people use this term or this relationship of respect is not even global throughout the entire Earth sphere. It is in Western culture where you can respect inanimate objects, inanimate things. So in that sense, but respect is not a term that you would use with describing a relationship with a flag or the nation that it represents. But that would just end the argument there. But the thing is, we can dive even deeper into this relationship of respect, and a term that goes synonymously with respect is respectable. Respect is a lot like love, similarly, because you cannot coerce love. You can coerce other types of affection, and sometimes you can even coerce types of adoration. But you can't coerce something as deep and profound as love. And the same thing goes for respect. It can't be in a situation where you reign in authority over another being. Respect has to be given, has to be willingly attributed to that particular relationship. So you cannot demand respect. You can demand adheration to your authority, but you cannot demand respect. It is not respect when it is given, when it is taken through some type of means of punishment that will be divvied out if that relationship isn't fulfilled. It doesn't work like that, because respect stays there regardless of whether you have a position where you could do harm to the other party in the relationship or not. If the only reason why they claim as though that they respect you is because of some punishment that you may divvy out if they don't, it's never respect. It is just them adhering to your authority. Because once that authority vanishes, that relationship dissolves. It's not something, respect is not something that you can lord over someone else. It is mutual. You can respect beings that are respectable. It has a certain feeling when you respect someone or something. It is of mutual benefit. Both parties feel elated in the process. when you find someone who has merit and quality and ability that you admire to the level that it reaches respect, you tend to mirror certain attributes that they have that you want to place into your life. That is the point of respect. If there is nothing about a particular entity or a being that you want to add onto yourself in order to bolster yourself and improve your own merit, respect cannot exist. So if there's a tyrannical entity that demands a certain level of reciprocation of some type of adoration from you, even if you adhere to their authority, it can never reach the profound levels of respect. It is a different relationship at that point. It is as long as this being, this entity, holds power over me, I will have this particular relationship with said entity. It never reaches the level of respect. You can have respect for an elderly man who can mean you no harm, a young girl who is trying her best, who can do you no wrong, who can harm you in no way, and they can't force this particular type of relationship from you. It has to be given willingly. That's what makes respect so profound. That's what makes respect able to fulfill its abilities within you as a human being. Respect is something that comes from living beings. It benefits living beings. You can't force somebody into that situation. It is impossible. Now, let's tie this to the current situation. First off, some people's relationships with any given party, whether it is a corporate entity, some type of national structure, some type of body of government, another person, their relationships will vary depending on the interactions that they had with outside parties or direct parties involved. Everybody is not going to have the same opinion of that entity that others will have. If there was a person who treated you correctly, who displayed certain levels of dignity, and who was a very able person, who had a lot of accolades, and that's the only perspective of them that you saw, it is natural for you to respect that person. But if there is another person who have seen other deeds that this person had done, let's say all of this stuff about this person was true and they would seem respectable, but in some instances they did some like heinous crime like child molestation, then all of those merits and deeds that they had done that other people know because they saw one perspective of this person would be null and void, because they did something so heinous that it just overtakes all of that, and therefore respect cannot be established. It's the same in any other type of relationship that we have with any other person or entity. Like, depending on your experiences and your particular status, your perspective of that entity, what you know of it, and how that knowledge and information affected you, you will come to a different opinion than someone else. And that's what respect is based on. It's not necessarily based on things that are factual or are actual. All of those things can exist, and someone cannot respect someone or something simply because they choose not to. They could deem them worthy, but not worthy enough. Everybody's spectrum of what is respectable is different. There are people could build schools, promote charities, do all sorts of philanthropy, and just be a generally pleasing person and have no wrongs to them at all. And then a person like me could say, oh, that's all they did? That's not enough for my respect. And that is completely up to the individual to formulate that opinion that leads to the relationship of respect and what is respectable. But most people have a reasonable spectrum. If you do all those things, and you have that type of demeanor, and you always are a dignifying person, and you have no wrongdoings, most people throughout the world will respect you. So in instances where you respect a particular individual or an entity or government or representation of, that does not mean that other people will. And when they don't, if you truly believe that that entity is respectable, it is time to investigate. It is time to get more perspective, more information. You need to view their deeds from all angles to see for yourself, is this truly an entity worth respecting, or is it not? Because to just throw somebody else's perspective to the wind is the same as them to do that to your perspective. And then nobody gains any ground. And then we're just arguing for the sake of arguing. So let's do that. Let's explore the situation from broader perspectives. Now, I've said in plenty of other videos, probably every other video that I made, slavery happened. It happened. The transatlantic slave trade was a thing. It was a thing that lasted for centuries before the creation of the United States. A lot of people would argue and have a lot of evidence to back it up that it was the foundation of the formation of the United States. With that being said, it is agreed upon in today's era that slavery was a heinous thing. It was known by many back in the time where it was utilized as a heinous thing. There were plenty of people who protested the use of human labor that was coerced in America. There was plenty of people, because if there wasn't, there would have been no Underground Railroad. There was plenty of people helping along stops, helping slaves to run away from their predicament. And if that wasn't going on back then we could say, oh, everybody was accepting of slavery. That was just a choice of the times. But since we have evidence that it wasn't just a choice of the times, we can say that it was not a respectable activity, even back when it was utilized. You can argue that it was necessary, yeah. Some people would agree with that argument. But you cannot argue that it was a choice of the time. That's just how people were then. Because no, everybody did not prescribe to that particular agenda. So that is a demean that sits on this nation, on this nation's flag. And all of the acts that happened thereafter. The mistreatment of the Aborigines, the mistreatment of immigrants who came and went, the mistreatment and like abuse further of blacks during Jim Crow. The fact that most people in this country, because half of the white population, which is their women, wasn't allowed to vote, and everybody who wasn't white, whether they were a man or a woman, wasn't allowed to vote until about, 70 years ago? So the fact that that's there, that's a demerit. And if you want to talk about corruption, lies, deceit, what have you, they're all demerits. Like, we all know America. We all know America isn't shiny and golden, as some people may proclaim. So we all can see the undersides which exist. And so that means, in the perspective of blacks, there has to be enough benefit, enough merits and deeds to overlap all of those demerits in a reasonable fashion. And you can say, oh, but America went to war to free blacks. But America is the one who continued to keep them in bondage in the first place. So if a person just stops committing a crime, that's not necessarily a merit. That's just them not continually to demerit themselves. And secondly, blacks fought in every single American war. So blacks fought to free blacks. Thirdly, the abolishment of slavery was more geared towards increasing global favor, because nobody wanted to trade with the United States globally, because they were too hard to compete with because of all of the free labor that was coming from the South. Anybody else doing agriculture couldn't possibly compete with people coercing people into doing labor for them for no material gain. That's why slavery was abolished. So none of those are merits. None of those are merits, and especially not from the perspective of blacks. None of those are merits. So now we come to the civil rights era. Eventually, other people did get the right to vote. But again, alleviating a crime that you were committing is not a merit. All you simply did was stop doing the crime. You never did anything else to alleviate that in order to bring in a meritorious deed into the spectrum. But you could say, oh, Aaron, what about affirmative action? There's lots of minorities that benefit from affirmative action. Like, you could even benefit from affirmative action. Not just me, also white women. Affirmative action is not just for minorities. Affirmative action is for women as well. So as far as affirmative action is concerned, I hold the weight of a white woman. Like, the only people who truly benefit from affirmative action are white men and minority women. Why? Because it is discrimination to bracket people into a gender or a race when you're thinking about the overall populace of your job, when affirmative action is in play. Like, you can't just come across a black woman and just throw Yolanda out like Yolanda's been counted. So, that's considered a type of discrimination. So for every woman, you get counted for affirmative action, and for every minority, you get counted for affirmative action. So Yolanda gets counted twice. It is a term that most of you know. You call minority women twofers. It is known throughout common knowledge in the United States. And what happens when you get twofers? You fill up your quota for affirmative action all the more quicker. And what happens when you fill up your quota for affirmative action all the more quicker? You can hire anybody else you want after that, once your quota's hit. So that means if you just simply want white men to get jobs, once you fill your quota up, you just hire the rest as white men. And the numbers still stay the same, and they just look slightly different. And of course, you're not going to hire some minority woman if they can't do the job. That's insane. So not only do these minority women do their jobs just as well as any other person would have their job, it makes it look as though your corporation or your company is being on the up and up as far as diversity is concerned, when really it doesn't have to be. I'm not saying that all corporations and companies aren't diverse. I'm saying that affirmative action does not assure that they have to be. And also, given the fact that most corporate jobs are negotiated person to person, minority women tend to settle for less money than what their work is actually worth. So they save a lot there too. So affirmative action is more in the favor of corporations than it is of the populace of minorities. So you can just look at it and say black men and white women don't gain anything from affirmative action at all. So that is a moot point. Again, that is something else that was overturned from action that shouldn't have been committed in the first place. So therefore, it cannot be considered as a meritorious deed. Now, let's dive a little deeper. Most people attribute the American flag as a representation of the military, of troops, and mostly the troops who sacrifice something during some type of war or conflict, which is any troop that's seen action. They've sacrificed something. So they try to throw in that argument. To disrespect the flags is to disrespect the troops. But first point, me personally, I've never asked for a troop to do anything on my behalf. You can believe that that is disrespectful, but the thing is, the relationship isn't there. So you can't false implant a relationship that I never had. In my opinion, there is not much benefit that I got from any troops' actions. My opinion. I don't know how things would have turned out if we didn't engage in certain conflicts, but that is beside the point. The point is also that American troops decided to be troops of their own fruition. They had their own reasons to do what they did. Their reasons could have been to protect people, but they would have had to known that some of those people weren't going to see it that way, and they still went through with their actions knowingly. So therefore, it was their choice, regardless of any relationships, even regardless of the relationship with the nation. Secondly, the troops could have benefited from some type of monetary material gain. A lot of good government jobs come from the military. So if a person chooses to work for a particular corporation, I am to respect them, even though they did not do such to garner my respect. They did so in order to uplift their own life. Again, it is not a relationship that you can forcibly implant onto me. So the fact that you believe that the flags represent what troops sacrifice themselves for does not correlate with any arguments, because firstly, the troops themselves would have to make that correlation that the flag represents what they were fighting for. Some of them do, but not all of them. Secondly, that does not mean that I have to acknowledge the relationship that they have with the flag and the nation, especially since all of the deeds that were done by this nation were not deeds that you could attribute merit to. So even if all of the actions of the troops were just and for a cause worthy of merit, it does not outweigh all of the wrong that was done. It really comes down to people trying to force black people into situations where they can claim that they are disrespectful. They believe that we should just take their perspective of how they view the nation and the nation's flag and implant that relationship into us and coerce respect from us. But as I stated earlier, coerced respect is not respect. It can never reach the profound levels of respect. So therefore, if the nation collapsed and the only thing that was left was the deeds that it's done throughout history, its legacy, people can scrutinize that as they see fit. And that's where the relationships, the true relationships, would come from. As long as you're lording authority over people, you can never understand their true feelings. People can say all day, oh, I love the flag, I respect the flag, I respect the United States of America. But you would never know if that was true or not, as long as you use authority as a means to gain that relationship. So it comes down to not should black people respect the flag, respect the United States. It's what type of person can respect the flag, respect the United States. And that's a person that benefited from its deeds. So if you are a person who benefited from the deeds, whether those deeds are considered of good merit or not, you're going to have a different perspective of someone who suffered from those same deeds. So, if you do respect the flag, and if you do respect the United States, what type of person are you? And I ask, can you respect yourself for respecting the flag? Again, this was a raw, unedited video. You can feel any way you want to feel about it. Formulate whatever opinion you like. Thank you for your time.